Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, how a TikTok video got one military officer court-martialed. Where did he allegedly cross the line? We'll have a look. Plus, robotic pets for vets. Check out a conversation with the CEO of a company looking to provide animatronic companion pets to former service members in need. And from a recent webcast, how do you balance access to sensitive data without creating security breaches? We talked to an expert on the topic. Also, who put a machine gun on the robot dog? The 10th Mountain Division did. Stay tuned for the images later in the show. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Diana Stancy. If you've got a phone and you're in the military, you've got TikTok. Every day, service members are lip-syncing, dancing, and emoting their way through their time in uniform, with a wide variety of results. But where does fun on social media potentially cross a line? One Navy officer recently found out when his video earned him a court-martial. The offending material? An homage to the Thank God It's Friday attitude right before you head out on leave via a profane rendition of Frozen's anthem, Let It Go. Check it out. Okay, maybe not the best idea for an officer, but did it really cross a legal line? Military Times managing editor Jeff Zuzulowicz stopped by earlier to talk about the story. Thanks so much for joining us, Jeff.
Hi, Diana. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, walk us through this case. What exactly happened here, and why was this military officer court-martialed in the first place?
Sure. So back in the summer of 2023, a Navy lieutenant commander, that's the equivalent of an 04 in the service, recorded kind of what he took to be kind of a humorous TikTok video that he would later claim, was only intended for his family and closest friends. He kind of lip synced a profanity-laced version of the song Let It Go from Frozen. And he was wearing his uniform at the time, and his, 04 oak leaf cluster was square in the frame. A few weeks later, his higher command out on the East Coast caught wind of this. They started looking into it, and later in 2023, a charge was referred against him for conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman. His private attorney argued that this in no way constituted conduct unbecoming, and a military judge at a court-martial earlier this summer found him not guilty.
Now, what do legal experts have to say about this case, and are they in agreement about how this was handled?
I spoke to 4 or 5 civilian defense attorneys, prior military folks who now defend troops, and they all question the command's decision to charge this officer in this case. They all pretty much agreed that this could have been handled by reading him the Riot Act, maybe some administrative actions, but they all felt that a federal conviction for an infraction like this was way out of bounds. And his civilian defense attorney argued as much during the trial, and the trial judge ultimately agreed with that argument.
Now, what are some of the key takeaways from this case overall, and what should other service members reflect on as they hear about this?
Think twice about what you post online, especially when you're in uniform. People did dumb stuff throughout human history, but now when you post it online, it's there forever.
Jeff, I know you talked to some legal experts on this matter. Let's take a look at one of those conversations.
We're joined now by Rachel Van Landingham. She's a professor of law at Southwestern Law School, a retired Air Force JAG, and a former president of the National Institute of Military Justice. She's here to break down this case and help us understand it further. Rachel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you reviewed this case for us before we ran our story, and you and I discussed it at length. What stood out to you in general about this case, and how often are we seeing troops court-martialed or tried for social media, postings that they do either in or out of uniform. How common is this?
It's not common at all. And in fact, military criminal prosecutions themselves are increasingly less common. The numbers of courts-martial that have occurred over the last 15 years have been on a drastic decline, straight angle down. So they really are supposed to be reserved for serious misconduct, criminal misconduct, not penny ante, perhaps stupid lack of judgment action, but for real serious crimes. And so that's why this case really stood out.
What was your take on the decision to charge that and kind of how that whole case played out?
What I saw was the abuse and misuse of the criminal justice system that's designed to provide, it's really designed primarily, first and foremost, to deter misconduct by levying a pretty heavy penalty, a stiff penalty on someone. If someone is court-martialed and convicted within the military, either what's called a special court-martial or general court-martial, they have a federal criminal conviction for the rest of their lives and the collateral consequences that follow from that. So this is not just, some administrative measure or something that stays within the military. This is something that can follow someone for years. Does it warrant some kind of disciplinary action by a commander? Sure, I think it did. But a federal criminal conviction? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, they don't bring the vast majority of sexual assault allegations against service members to court. They don't court-martial those. They court-martial a tiny fraction of those. Yeah, you're going to court-martial this guy for blowing off steam off TikTok. It just, to me, demonstrated the lack of judgment commanders have regarding when to prosecute and when not to. They should not have any kind of prosecutorial discretion. Congress decided that commanders could not be trusted with disposing of sexual assault crimes. They cannot be trusted with murder. They cannot be trusted with manslaughter. If commanders can't be trusted with serious crimes, the disposition of serious crimes, why do we think they can be trusted with any crime? And I think this case really brings that up.
Rachel Van Landingham, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
In headlines from around the military and defense spaces, RTX recently landed a nearly $500 million contract from NATO to replenish Patriot missiles sent by Germany to Ukraine to aid in that country's defense against the Russians. In January, the multinational alliance ordered up to 1,000 of the air defense missiles as part of a $5.5 billion effort to supply regional nations with the weapons. The new contract comes on top of an earlier deal worth $1.2 billion for RTX Raytheon to provide Patriot missiles and defense components to Germany as systems get sent to Ukraine. Back to the military side, where we've got some eye-catching images for you. First up, a machine gun mounted on a robot dog? Yep, you heard it right. Footage from a recent exercise called Operation Hard Kill yielded the images, showing a kitted-out quadruped sporting a weapon. No details were provided on the killer dog bot, but it sure looks menacing. And in Arkansas, is that a Hercules holding up traffic? Indeed it is. Members of the 1st and 492nd Special Operations Wings practiced highway landings recently, prepping for a time they may need to land and take off in a contested space with no available airfield. The operation was part of an exercise called Emerald Warrior 24 in Bono, Arkansas, and footage shows the air crews making deft landings on the country roadways. Not bad, guys. And now, for one of everybody's favorites, North Korean military members going bananas during a display. In footage released by the country, rows of military trucks and launchers were seen flanked by personnel and an applauding crowd. The background of the event could be potentially serious. The country says it was marking the delivery of 250 nuclear-capable missile launchers to frontline military units. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said in his address that the launchers would bring overwhelming firepower over South Korea. North Korea has been expanding its lineup of mobile short-range weapons while also pursuing long-range ballistic missiles capable of reaching the U.S. mainland. And in more serious news, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has ordered a guided missile submarine to steam to the Middle East amid rising tensions between Iran and Israel. With Israel expecting Iran to attack it in retaliation for the assassination of a Hamas leader on its territory and a Hezbollah commander in Beirut, Austin sent more U.S. forces into the area. The Defense Secretary also told the at-sea aircraft carrier strike group Abraham Lincoln to speed up its transit to the area in case conflict breaks out sooner rather than later. Officials did not say how quickly either vessel might arrive in the region. When we return, Robotic Pets for Vets. Learn about a new initiative to place furry friends with former service members in need of companionship. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. Everybody could use a little companionship from a loyal pet, but for some people, that kind of company can be part of a regimen that keeps them mentally and physically healthy. People facing loneliness, dementia, or social isolation can often derive joy or relief from interacting with a dog, cat, or other animal. But not everyone can handle the rigors of having a pet, which is where a company called Ageless Innovation comes in. They have developed robotic companion pets meant to help soothe people in long-term care. In a new program, Ageless Innovation and a nonprofit health group are planning to distribute thousands of the pets to veterans in long-term care or with other needs. Military Times ground warfare editor Todd South recently spoke to the CEO of the company that makes the pets about the effort. Have a look.
So it's always good to kind of get a little personal touch here. So before we talk about the company, if you could just tell us a little your background, especially as it relates to these types of technologies or this type of endeavor to help seniors with technology. So I don't know if you've had training or education or previous business experience. If you want to share some of that, we can talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in the manufacturing industry out of college, and then went into some technology, early stage companies. Ended up at Hasbro in about the fourth or fifth iteration of my career. And at Hasbro, I was brought in to sort of lead this new innovation team. And the focus there was, Hasbro is the world's largest toy company. The focus there was thinking about ways to leverage what Hasbro was good at in new markets and new channels. We chose health and wellness, did a bunch of research, and found this incredible need in the older adult population for more fun and joy and play and companionship. And so that's what led to the launch of this brand, Joy for All, which we started at Hasbro. And then from there, we ran it inside the company for about 4 years and then spun it out about 6 years ago so we could focus 100% on older adults and their families.
Well, very, very cool. So let's talk a little bit about the need there, if you can. I mean, you guys identified this need. I don't know when that happened. You could tell us kind of the time frame and where technology, the vision to see where that might fill that need. Kind of how is that identified, and kind of what kind of need are we talking about, especially among older people and veterans?
When I got to Hasbro, we decided that health and wellness was the area. There was actually an insight that was about 20 plus years old about this product that was created for 4 to 8 year old girls, was the category. And if you read the reviews, about 20% of them were mom not buying them for their daughter, but buying them for an aging loved one. And as we leaned into that, what we found is really two key pillar insights. One was there was this incredible need for interactive companionship in the older adult population. There was an epidemic well before the pandemic, but an epidemic of loneliness and isolation that was causing, innumerable health issues for older adults. And it just started to get recognized. And from there, as we went out and researched this and talked to older adults, we showed them a bunch of different concepts, everything from arts and crafts to games to digital to, you name it. And this idea of a companion was something that resonated far above and beyond anything else. And so, as we looked at all the different options and how we might serve this population with more fun, joy, and play, this idea of these interactive companion pets sort of rose to the top. And whether it was, dementia, Alzheimer's, loneliness, isolation, there were so many reasons. People typically loved their pets. They had great memories. And as they aged, in many cases, they were not able to have real pets. And so fulfilling and filling that void was something that we thought was really neat and interesting. And obviously the use of this technology, the key to it is it's very simple. I think you don't have to read the directions. You sort of take it out of the package. You name it, Spot or Fluffy or whatever you name it, and then sort of the magic starts. So that's sort of where we came up with that.
So Ted, if you could show us a little bit about how these pets work, kind of what kind of things you can do with them.
Yeah, great. So I just happen to have my Joy for All companion pet cat sitting here in my lap, but simple turn on switch, and then you start to see sort of lifelike movements, and our pets respond to sound and to touch and to changes in light. You can see she's raising her paw just to preen a little bit. She wants to clean up for you. But really, as we were designing these and we were talking to older adults about what is it that they wanted, the realism piece was really important. I'm going to turn her off for a second just so she's not meowing over my talk. But you know, simple things like what we heard from older adults is that these paw pads made, you know, like the distinct memory of the feeling of a cat's paw pad was so important to them. So we had designed, you know, very realistic paw pads. And you probably can't see the whiskers here, but cats don't have straight whiskers, and most toys have straight whiskers because it's just easier process. Ours are tapered because that's what older adults told us. One of the key features that we hear about, you know, especially in the cat, is that cats, when they purr, they have a tactile vibration that you feel, and that meant so much to you. So we created a technology inside of the cat called VibraPurr. So when our cats purr, you actually feel it. So if it's sitting on your lap, you're really getting this interactive give and take relationship. And similarly with our pup, there's a heartbeat that, you know, that triggers if it's, you know, not acting like a puppy. The cat's completely non-predictable because cats never do what you want them to do when you want it to do it. So if I had told it to preen right then or tried to get it to do it, it wouldn't have, but it does it on its own. With a pup's a little bit more predictable, as pups are.
Ted, I understand you have a specific program geared toward veterans. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're so honored to be part of the Robotic Pets for Veterans program that's really funded by Capital Caring Health, who's one of the leading palliative care and hospice providers in the Mid-Atlantic and really connected all over the country. And basically, it was a collaboration between Steve Cohn, who works for Capital Caring Health, and our team to figure out how can we serve the veterans of our country, especially those with dementia and Alzheimer's. And last year we did a program where we went to all the federally run veterans hospitals and communities, and this year we're doing all the state-run veterans. So we're so excited to be part of it, and you know, our goal is to ensure that every veteran in need has, you know, if our pets can be helpful and something that gives them joy and comfort and calm, we're so excited. And obviously this population is hugely important to us, so we couldn't be more proud to be part of it.
When we come back, quick, what's the difference between a fixed and an adjustable mortgage rate? Need a refresher? Jeanette Mack from Navy Federal Credit Union is here to give you a lesson. Don't go away. Welcome back. All right, sailor, it's time to lay down some roots and buy a home. But do you know the difference between the types of mortgage rates you'll need to consider? On this edition of Money Minute, Jeanette Mack from Navy Federal Credit Union returns to give you some pointers on the topic.
For military families, buying a home is one of the biggest and most important purchases of their lives. Sometimes it means after many changes of duty station, you're finally ready to put down roots. It's a big decision that requires knowing what your options are. Whether you're going with a VA or regular mortgage, there are two main types of mortgage loans: fixed rate and adjustable rate, or ARMs for short. The right one depends on your needs and your budget. Fixed rate mortgages are just that, mortgage loans with a fixed interest rate and a monthly payment that won't change, which is a big help for your budget. ARMs, on the other hand, have a lower interest rate for a set period of time. When the time is up, the rate adjusts up or down depending on the market rate. ARMs are a good choice if you expect your income to increase over time or if you plan to move before the rate adjusts, which makes it attractive for military families. Ultimately, the best way to decide is to talk to a lender that understands you, and for members of the military, that's a critical part of the mission.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, set the target for your personal Terminator dog on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more headlines. And to be the smartest riverine in the boat, sign up for our early bird brief, compiled each morning to bring you the most recent headlines. Lastly, if social media is where you find open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you think you can use it without drawing a court-martial, find us on TikTok, where we post every day. When we come back, bridging the divide between access and security when it comes to data in the military. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Diana Stancy. When it comes to managing data in a sensitive setting, the military has a tough job. How do you manage access to restricted information without creating the potential for breaches? On top of that, how do you do it when attempting to connect different branches of the military and potentially in the heat of battle? That was a question explored in a recent Defense News webcast, Balancing Data Access and Security. Here's part of the conversation.
I would want to know if you can walk us through what the biggest challenge is to successfully collecting, analyzing, and then securing vast quantities of data, which is something that obviously you're involved heavily in.
Yeah, so the challenges are really the different types of data for the dependent on the system that you're getting the data from. So sometimes I think people don't realize that all of the systems that we leverage every day, be it in our personal or professional lives, has data connected to it. So it goes beyond the standard, office applications that we use, in either Google or 365, right? So that's data creation there, records creation, and then if you have any other kind of system that we access for our day-to-day jobs, like financial systems or websites, Facebook, whatever we're accessing, right? We have to be able to maintain and control that data. So the vastness and the scope of that data is a large challenge. The associated cost of maintaining that data, depending on how much you need to keep, is a big challenge as well. And I think the different data types, right? So there's not a standard data format. So different systems store things in different manners.
Inherent in that too is sort of a balance. One, securing the data, protecting it, while also making sure that it's accessible to users who need to use it. I'm wondering if you can go into how best to balance those two things and in the work that you do.
Right. So a lot of that is access control, right? So you have to think about the different audiences that you want to be able to access your data. And in processes like zero trust, it's default to deny, right? So you go down a path of denying people access to the data, and then make sure you have access control lists and the right tooling to be able to protect the data. And then you also have to think about the different people who you want to access the data and for what and why, right? So insider threat, for example, is something that needs to be considered. The number of administrators that have access to these systems and whether they should or not need to know when you think about things like classification is also something. And then so I think the perception that there's a lot of data, and then the access control to that data, and then making sure you don't deny your user base access to the data is really the balancing act that I think we're faced with as it pertains to data.
I'm wondering if we can return to the topic of balance, making sure that you're striking the right balance in terms of access between users you want there versus those who aren't there, and then making sure that they can't move laterally within the system once they get there, given the presumption of infiltration. Tell me how this is different versus somebody in the Pentagon in Arlington versus somebody who is out in the field, whether it's in Mogadishu or somewhere else.
Right. So I think the first place you start, which we haven't mentioned up until this point, but is a key part of the pillar discussion that I started, which is identity, right? So you have to understand who your people are, and you have to have systems that provide that access. And so access-based control really depends on understanding who your people are, and location adds another variable that can be tailored towards, right? If you want to further restrict access or further grant access. So the systems that are being deployed at this point, have factors that are configurable that allow you to enable access or disable access. For example, GPS location, right? So you can have situations where if somebody's accessing your network from Russia at 3 a.m, you don't understand why. You could set policy that limits that access, right? And until you validate who that user is and what they're accessing from, and whether that makes sense or not. So that's a key part is identity. The other part is, we talked about visualization. So there's cyber defenders across industry and across the DoD that's looking at all these access points. So every time there's a denial, or every time there's an access that looks a little fishy, right? There's operators that are actioning those alerts based on field conditions and either blocking or allowing access in real time. Like that's something that happens in every business and every IT, whether it's SOC ops or CSSP ops is what DISA calls it.
Well, that's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.